Before you start asking what happened to the Gothic video, let me show you what a nightmare it was to get running properly. I spent a good while just trying to get the controls into a remotely usable state, only for this to happen. Oh, I can't reload my quick save from the menu because it's hidden? I'll just start again and that should... Okay, let's try using the Union and System Pack stuff to see if that helps. Maybe GOG forgot to include that. Maybe the sequel will run better. Okay, it's not letting me save any of the graphical settings. I could do this manually through the config. God damn it. Alright, maybe Dark Messiah would work. No, it won't even start. Launch options, patch, still nothing. I'm running through the list at this point. Jade Empire would be cool to revisit, and it's crashed barely into the tutorial. Fuck me. Well, since I apparently have an uncanny ability to break games on GOG or Steam wherever I go, that or the algorithm gods really don't want this video to be made, let's try to find some other niche RPG. Divinity 2, also known as the Dragon Knight Saga, or the version I'm playing here, the complete so-called developer's cut, sits within a weird middle ground for the RPG genre of the 2000s. It's not unlike Gothic 3 in that sense, that it's coming off the back of far better games. 3D engines have advanced enough that it doesn't look and play like complete arse, but it's impossible to miss. This comes with a certain level of jank. And that's not in a good or endearing way. For a long time, Divinity was a middleware series that, aside from a small cult following, mostly staggered along from sequel to sequel in the shadow of more popular titles like Baldur's Gate, or even Icewind Dale and Dark Alliance. Even now, if you were to ask most people about Larian's catalogue of games, chances are they think the Belgian developer just appeared one day with Baldur's Gate 3, or at least there was an implied sequel prior to Original Sin 2. The reality is that Divinity is one of the more notable RPG series that never really got its time to shine. A lot of this did come from publisher interference, but it's also fair to say that these were ambitious and very, very rough games that simply couldn't compete with the stronger writing, characters, and level of quality in its contemporaries. This was technically the first Larian game I played. Must have been back around the same time as Kingdoms of Amalur, funnily enough, where I'd bought a disc copy of Divinity 2 for Steam and fired it up on my PC, only to find it ran like absolute arse. It's funny to think of that now. I mean, just look at it. In the days where I was running Skyrim or Fallout 3 on the lowest settings. I haven't touched any of Larian's games since the colossal disappointment that Baldur's Gate 3 turned out to be inflicted itself on the world. But since everything else is practically exploding in my face, this has been sitting in my Steam library for well over a decade now. Now's as good a time as any to dust it off. By the way, thanks for making that confusing for everyone, Larian. Divinity 2, not to be confused with Divinity Original Sin 2, or the second Divinity game, Beyond Divinity, which would technically make this Divinity 3, let alone the difference between Ego Draconis and the Flames of Vengeance expansion. Oh god, it's running on Gamebryo. Usually gameplay is first up, but since this will be pretty goddamn clear from the moment you start the game, let's talk about the visuals first. Divinity 2 is so brown, it gives Gears of War a run for its money. This game is honestly hard to look at, because there's a shit brown filter over everything that makes it look like crap. This is meant to be a forest area. It doesn't look warm, it's not autumnal, it looks like someone's pissed all over the screen. It's repulsive. Don't even try to use its age as an excuse. Baldur's Gate came out more than 10 years before. And Fallout, Deus Ex, Morrowind, much older games that have aged far better than this. At least it gets better over the day-night cycle. a bit. From the very start, Divinity 2 doesn't make a very good first impression. The character creation is pathetic. I actually did a double take, thinking that maybe there was a mistake or another screen after it, but no, this is actually it. These are the only options you get for making your character. This must be up there with the worst character creator in any RPG, to the point Larian shouldn't have even bothered. The UI is also pretty awful. Not unlike Amalur, Divinity is trying to be cinematic with the black bars and dialogue interface taking up most of the screen, but we're not in the early 90s anymore, guys. This isn't a dungeon crawler like Ultima Underworld, where you have to limit the amount of space being rendered on screen. Not only that, there's no option to turn off subtitles. This is the first thing I look for in pretty much any game. I don't want that shit cluttering my screen. This is one of the few games I can think of where, for some reason, you can't turn it off. Not exactly off to a good start, Larian. I know the game's been loaded. Why on earth would you feel the need to tell players that? Are you trying to waste people's time? You can't even use quick load after dying either. The controls are disabled, so you have to go through and manually click it in the menu. The poor design extends into the inventory that misses something as basic as seeing all items grouped under one main tab, not separate categories. This is basic quality of life we're talking about here. The jank continues into the animations. Just look at something as simple as climbing up a ladder, because you can rotate in the air, or snap to the ground when trying to unsheath mid-jump. This is the kind of thing you'd see in student games with zero money, not a multi-million-dollar studio. Were Piranha Bytes and Larian trying to outdo each other or something? Oh good, and I just crashed. This was after the fan patch, by the way, and don't worry, because it's about to get worse. It's hard to describe how bad combat in Divinity 2 feels. Maybe it was on me for playing as a warrior, but it's as if the animations are separate from your input. It kind of reminds me of the Witcher 1 combat, like it's automated, but not particularly well. Take this example, where I'm being swarmed by skeletons in the first major area. I'm hitting the mouse over and over, but my character is just doing whatever he likes at this stage, because I guess the animation is locked in. I was totally screwed on low health, so I was just jumping around at this point and trying to cheese them as much as possible. Now, does this look like fun, intuitive gameplay to you, let alone balanced? Yeah, I didn't think so. Much like Piranha Bytes, clearly Larian still hadn't grown out of this phase and comfortably coasting along and making the same janky games they had 10 years before, and Divinity 2 is all the worse for it. However, unlike Bethesda for example, Larian did eventually see the need for change and completely revolutionize the series and the studio for Original Sin onwards, and the results speak for themselves. Playing Divinity 2 for any amount of time though, it's not hard to see why the studio was on the verge of bankruptcy. This is a really bad game, and it suffers from the same problems that most of Larian's titles have, just to a greater degree, and with less polish or high production values to hide it. Original Sin wasn't much better. The balancing in 2 was especially bad with the armor and shield system, or how the marksman ability or whatever it was called was a flat increase to specifically range damage, yet the melee equivalent was an increase to all damage. It's a similar story here. The skill tree has such creative additions as 5% compared to a 2% increase, or dealing 10 damage on an attack rather than 6. This is the absolute bottom of the barrel game design, and a wonderful example of the Ubisoft style bloat that has led to many of the RPGs today. The skill tree is pathetic, as is the attributes. Wow, I just leveled up. Look guys, I have 0.8% more resistance to melee than I did a moment ago. Yay! This is like the worst of ARPG stat bloat combined with the utterly useless incremental skill progression of Mass Effect 1. Who the hell thought 1% here or an extra bit of regen there would make for compelling gameplay? This game is bursting at the seams with poorly made, time-wasting crap. Unfortunately, it's not just in the presentation or gameplay department that Divinity 2 drops the ball. The jank continues into the story. I've said this before when talking about the original Sin games, but Larian cannot do world building to save their life. Even at the very end of Original Sin 2, a series that spanned nearly 20 years by that point, there was no other boss to use, so let's just throw in Brachus Rex again, I guess. Even the very gods, something that was kinda important to the story of the game, were suddenly introduced since no one ever thought that something as fundamental as religion should have been fleshed out before that. Can anyone seriously tell me they'd heard of Solsticia, Tyrsendelius, or Xantessa before playing it? Divinity 2, again, not to be confused with Original Sin 2, is no exception. Let me tell you all the lore you need to know about this universe, and the only thing Larian clearly thought mattered: Lucian and Damien. That's it. It all comes back to Lucian and Damien. Nothing else. As for the rest, we can just make things up as we go along. This being fantasy, and because dragons are super cool, right? The story is centered around being a shape-shifting dragon knight, because God knows we sank a lot of time into making the flight system, so we have to make this work. I could describe to you how the setup for the game works, but instead, let me just show you how this introduction plays out. Hello? Who are you? Where did you come from? I have dragon powers, and the Elminster knockoff is here now? What the hell is happening? A few moments ago I was jumping through the wilderness, and suddenly you get all this dropped on you out of nowhere. It's so random and uneven, it feels like satire. You know this guy's evil because he's wearing spiky armor, but wait, how the hell did he get here from the cutscene? Now it's time to fight through more skeletons. Yay. God, this is miserable. Much has been said about Larian's goofy, light-hearted tone already, and by the time you get in the tower with the skeleton merchant, screw this. I'm just gonna cheese the collision and jump around your stupid-ass gate. It's doing the exact same joke from the first game. Remember, Larian is trying to be funny in a game that looks like this. Yuck. It was at this point where I couldn't take another second of Divinity 2 anymore, but I kept pushing on to see if it would get any better. Don't mind me, just need to get past the enemies here. Oh, yep. Just almost there. More skeletons are always welcome, Larian. Nice to see the balancing on full display. Right, now to these Slayer people again. What? Now they're killing me. I'm screwed. I already bought all the health potions I could find. The only other weapon I got was, for some reason, 5 levels above me, so I can't equip it, and yeah, I'm screwed. Fuck this game. It should be pretty fucking obvious by now that I loathe this game. I spent a good 3 or so hours of my life giving us another shot, and that's 3 hours too many that I'll never get back. This is beyond jank. It's irredeemably awful. I'm sorry if that's harsh, and it comes across like I'm hating on your favorite game, but Divinity 2 has not aged gracefully because it wasn't even good for its time. This is a horrendous game, pretty much across the board. Awful presentation, ugly character models, annoying dialogue, pointless, dogshit gameplay mechanics, and a story that exposes the worst of how hollow Divinity really is. There is no charm to redeem it, and there isn't a fan patch in the world that could make it shine when the whole thing is rotten through to its core. I strongly recommend you stay far away from Divinity 2. I can only imagine how bad it must have been prior to the overhauled developer's cut. I've played many janky games over the years. I can push through bad combat or bugs or paper-thin writing if there's something good to be found, but there's simply nothing here to make the pain worth it. Stay away from Divinity 2 and hope that Larian's next game, they're finally able to match the writing and design of games they've been aping since the start. I won't hold my breath.